Welcome to the Self Illumination podcast. I'm so stoked that you're here, and I'm really excited to introduce my first guest. I'm so stoked, the lovely Meagan Honea, who is a yoga instructor. She's an Ayurvedic practitioner and what I believe to be an all around badass, awesome mama. And she's on the planet to assist everyone in recognizing their amazingness. And she does this by being fully invested in learning about bodies. She loves Ayurvedic anatomy, the subtle energies of the body, and how we can emotionally connect to them as we continue to evolve the contract or the dialogue that we have with this beautiful body. So, Meagan, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Absolutely. Well, it's a mutual feeling. It's one of my greatest blessings in life is that I get to meet and collaborate with all of these amazing people on the planet.
Yeah, same.
So
Ditto.
as I was, we had some conversations before about just like yoga and some body stuff, and I'm going to get to that. But before we do that, I'd love for you to tell the listeners, like, what does it mean for you to be in the body? Like, what does that mean to you?
Well, I think, I can start by sort of telling you where this all kind of started for me. So, I grew up and one of my like earliest memories, okay, I I had the privilege of knowing both like two of my great grandmothers, and both of them were they were like beautiful women, but like very much in their masculine also, right? And one of my grandmothers, she passed away, my great grandmother, she passed away whenever I was 13. Her name was Fanny Bell, and she was tall and she worked in the yard, and she was kind of like a witchy woman, and she had like these big hands, right? She was just kind of like a broad shouldered, like tall, beautiful woman.
Yeah, this is what I always think of as like an Amazonian woman, right?
Yes.
Like when we think about that just presence of the goddess
Yes.
almost.
So she was that. And I can remember, and not to the detriment like of anyone, because I feel a lot of times we speak from a place about bodies because we're kind of unaware, right? But this awareness developed for me because I had these hands, right? And my one of my grandmothers told me whenever I was a little girl that I had short, fat fingers and that they were like my grandmother, my Granny Fanny Bell's fingers. And so after that point, that idea was in my head. And I remember being like in gym class as a kindergartner, and I would hide my hands. I would ball my hands, I would want to hide them. I was also really tall. Like you've seen my son, I have a Amazonian son as well. I mean, he is just out of this world tall. He's like a tree trunk. And I was really tall. I was always taller than everyone. So there was part of that misunderstanding for me about what it was like to have some of this like masculine energy as a little girl and to be in my body, because I was constantly learning to like compare my body to others,
So
right?
that programming, right? That all
Yeah,
all of us experience. Like you
all of us.
instantly got programmed that if your fingers looked like this, they were short and
Hmm.
fat. Or if
Yeah.
you were tall but no one else was tall, that was a
Hmm.
negative, which is
Yeah,
what
and that
so many of us get programmed into our body, and like we're still trying to figure out, oh my god, I have a body, how cool is this, right?
right. And so, that programming occurred, which led to other programming as I got older. As a lot of us as women, I've gone through having eating disorders, body dysmorphia. Sometimes it's like the way I look, even now, even through all the work I've gone through. Sometimes how I see myself in a mirror is, I know, a lot different than how others see me, whatever. And then I was able to, I think, first initially really get into my body, coming from a place of privilege, like the privilege to be able to like join a gym and take a yoga class for my first time. And you know coming from the background I come from, I didn't grow up in India or in an ashram. Like I found this yoga stuff on my own, and it's such a wonderful thing. But the process itself, like, hasn't been that beautiful when I started doing yoga. I was doing hot yoga like 3 times a day. I was trying to get smaller, smaller, smaller,
So you
or
were orienting toward trying to get in your
mhm,
body from the, and I think this is what a lot of people, not just women, but a lot of people experience is
mhm,
that we're all trying to get in our body
right,
from the conceptualization of how other people have told us our body should look, should
mhm,
feel, should be. So I love that you just said that, right? Where you were like, I was trying to get thinner. Because
yeah,
really, when you're in your body, right, when you're taking that self, what I call self illumination, when you're taking that journey of initiation, it's really about like, well, shit, what does my own body even feel like?
mhm,
Like, I got
yeah.
to get the foundation, right?
So even at that point, I don't think, I was about to be married. I was running away from things is really what I was doing. But my body knew that it was my body that I needed to go to. So I may not have gone about it the right way at first because as just like everyone, we get stuck in patterns. But as a you know going through a yoga teacher training program, I believe that it was my first experiences with like restorative yoga and yin yoga, actually sitting in meditative spaces inside my body, which is when I started to really understand. That's when my practice started changing. When I started, now don't get me wrong, I still believe a lot of things all the time that
Yeah, but you
I
know what?
shouldn't.
What you're
But
speaking to is a bigger conversation, and maybe that'll be one of my next
yeah.
podcast episodes here is that it was the first time you were really allowing yourself to be in the receptive. You were
And it made me
stepping.
angry. I was
Yeah.
angry.
Yeah. Well, there's a part, do you feel like it made you angry because you were like, well, shit, why didn't I know it could be this easy all along?
I think eventually, but first it made me angry because I was like, I need to move my body. I need to be, this isn't going to change my body. This is going to change
Yeah.
my mind, is what it did. So, I guess so now where I'm at having taught yoga, I understand like the part of the purpose of being a teacher for me is constantly learning about not just my own body, dealing with all the palpitations of that as they come and go, because it's a never ending process, I believe. Like discovering as I go through phases of the seasons, my body changes every season. The seasons of my life, like fertility, when I go through menopause at some point, like the body will change, but also like every body that enters a room and then I close the door and I'm holding space, like these bodies are so different. Everybody is different. And, yoga itself, like, right, it was really, you know, kind of these shapes that we see aren't necessarily made the shape itself the way it looks perfect, like in a book, like, or the way like Mr. Iyengar looks in a shape may not look how all my students are going to look. So as a
Yeah. And
teacher, I'm constantly trying to figure out ways to say things so that that shape can be made in a body that's injured or a body that's big or a body that's frail or a body that's kind of disassociated from its owner type of, so
yeah, well, what's cool is, it isn't the body that's disassociated, it's the
yeah,
mind, right? And this
yes.
is, I think, the thing that we see so often in students is that they come into a studio or, I love dance. So sometimes I watch people in their body when they dance. And this is why most people don't like to dance because they feel like a fish out of water. They're not in their
Mhm,
body, they're in their mind. And
mhm,
one thing I really want people to walk away from this episode with is that if you really want to love yourself, you got to get in your body. You got to get
mhm,
invested because it is the portal of consciousness,
right,
right? Your body doesn't just carry your brain around. Your brain is an addition to your body, but the body is the house of consciousness. And I
mhm,
love that you brought that up about all these different shaped bodies with these different shaped poses because the unilateral factor in the room is that we're all in a body.
yeah,
And most of us aren't fully embodied. And so we take these shapes to kind of see, oh, how can I bring the mind and the body together with the conduit of the breath in this moment? And then what does that change in the experience of my own being, right? My own bodied state. So, what I'm
Mhm.
really curious about for you is as you continue to study, Ayurveda, Ayurvedic anatomy, energetic anatomy, what is something that has really just kind of like blown your mind and gotten you deeper in touch with your own body?
Well, I think it's like, I've always come from a place of, like, being radical.
Hmm.
Okay, from a childhood, I was like, "Well, if I do this radical stuff, then I'm just gonna, then I'm stepping outside these boundaries." People are constantly putting, like, boundaries in front of me, and I want to escape them, right? Because my soul is not bound by those things. That's
Yep.
just what's being told to me. So, I think it's like this work towards, like, radical self-love, okay? But it's not just self-love for me, because it's not just changing how I see my body. That's hard work, and I know that, and I have to do that. But also changing how I'm seeing other people's bodies, because no matter what, like, there are gonna be times when a thought enters my head, you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like, oh, so it's just that radical love, you know,
Yeah,
for
this
for
is what
each
Tara
body.
Brach, radical acceptance.
Mhm,
We really there's a great book out there for those of you that are listening called Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach. And she talks about this of just understanding that we have all been so programmed and brainwashed. And by proxy, your brain hemispheres are out of whack. If you identify as someone who's right brain, you need more left brain. If you're more left brain, you need more right brain. And the more you can
mhm.
bring those into balance, the easier it's going to be for you to love yourself, even when things run through the mind, right? It's kind
Yeah,
of like when we have a body sensation, many of us have been taught to, oh, just take this pill or just distract with this. But as you start loving yourself and you really start listening to your body, don't you find that your body's talking to you all the time?
yes.
Yeah. And
Yes.
isn't it so cool when you start listening to that?
Mhm,
And I think this
totally.
is, I don't know about you, because you've got Ayurveda skills that I don't have. And I think that it's when you really start listening to your body, not just on the like, oh, I don't feel so good in my right shoulder, or oh, I have a headache, but you're listening every meal, every
Mhm.
day, every season, every like I'm watching this TV show and I'm having this pain in my gut. Obviously, I'm not digesting that well,
Yeah,
right?
but I think
That's
also I remember you saying before, like, if that right shoulder is hurting, like, don't become your right shoulder. You're much more than your right shoulder.
Yeah. But
You have
have a dialogue with the right shoulder,
yeah.
right? Like, most of us, and I love that you brought that up, because a lot of us, when we're in pain, that's what we do. We become the pain, we
Mhm.
identify with it, and then it becomes really hard to remember that the rest of our body is perfectly functional and healthy,
Yeah,
right? We
and,
just become that issue. And so as we get more into the body, then I really feel like we start realizing that our body is this amazing portal of consciousness.
mhm. Yeah, and we as humans, like, in a we in the human body,
Mhm.
uh, and when we're not as connected, different times we're more connected with, like, our higher selves. All of us go through times where we're not, and in those moments, I think it's like we as humans are truly just making it harder on other humans. We're making, like, being human so much harder than it has to
And it
be.
has to
So,
be,
you
right?
know, so Ayurvedically right now, like, we're kind of in this end of kapha season, right? And kapha season, is like wet and damp and moist. And a lot of us struggle with the transition. I know, like, last year specifically, I did. I carried into, like, that summer pitta season a lot of kapha. And it was really difficult for me to deal with, like, emotionally, all that. So I'm just kind of like underhandedly in all of my classes incorporating all of these things, that we can do, you know. But I have to be really careful with my language because while like the detox is important and digestion is important, I don't want people to think that like removing like the kapha or breaking up kapha, like kapha is not a bad thing. Like we can't be without kapha. We don't have bodies without kapha. Kapha is not bad, So,
So I think
there's
you're
a
bringing up a really good point, right? Like most of us have been programmed to really judge and critique things very black or white, which is that,
mhm,
scientific method of the old paradigm, the masculine mind, this whole construct of like, oh, if I'm having these feelings, it's bad. I should be this way. I should be this way, and I always say you're going to should all over yourself because
yeah,
the reality is the way you are in this moment houses great information and potentiality, right? So if you're carrying something forward, especially in your body, then it's going to be really important for you to keep coming back home to the body, keep
mhm,
facilitating that dialogue, right? And so many
yeah,
of us have been programmed to have that dialogue externally. And this invitation of yoga, this invitation of Ayurveda, this invitation of self-love is really about the internal dialogue that's going on.
yeah,
And I think that that's something that, as people who have the great blessing to share these practices and these paths of illumination with other beings, that is that most important thing to just say out loud is that we are also on the journey, right? Every
yeah,
day we're cultivating this connection with our own body. Every day we're deprogramming ourselves from all the stuff that has been, placed in our mind. I think the last time I bought I love fashion. If I could go back to school, I always make a joke that it would be fashion. Um, and I look specifically like I used to get every magazine on the planet. And then I just had this paradigm shift. It happened literally in a moment. I mean, I took every magazine and trashed them in a moment, and I haven't bought another one since, where I just was looking at all this stuff going, I'm not investing in this anymore. I'm not investing in this concept of if something doesn't look like this, it isn't beautiful. Because the
yeah,
reality is if you look at the planet, every tree has a different texture, a different leaf pattern, a different color. They're not standing in the forest judging each other because one is bigger and one is skinny, or one is, has fairer bark than the other one, or it has more texture in the bark than the other one, or the leaves are a different shape or a different color. And this is universal law, right? There is no
mhm,
judgment like that. Everything is the way it was divinely designed to be. And I think that this is something as yoga teachers we experience in all ways, and many other things, not just yoga teachers, but I'm speaking from what I know, right? Which is this concept of not only body dysmorphia but body shaming,
oh yeah.
right?
And there is, and I spoke earlier about, I have the privilege, to walk into a yoga studio, and I, even as a yoga teacher, I'm not teaching free yoga. Like I get paid to teach yoga. I mean, sometimes I do, but I'm getting paid. I'm teaching yoga in very affluent areas, and I notice things all the time. And for me um as a person like that's made that contract like at a spiritual level to hold space for people, I have to listen and I have to be aware. So because of my privilege, I don't know everything. Like I know my body very well and I still have a million things to learn about it. So how much can I learn from other people's bodies as they come in? Each time someone with an injury or with a bigger body, like just for example, I've had a student coming to my class and I watched her. She's a bigger bodied woman, like a beautiful woman. Okay, and she was very beginner when she entered my class. She's been coming about a month and a half now, and I've steadily watched as she's grown more comfortable. Each class I can tell she's steady. I mean, talk about like that beautiful kapha, like that is her. Okay, like like a tree. Okay. I mean, like her, it holding long, I teach a longer hold, and oh my God. Like, so anyway, this yesterday morning, like her practice was just almost brought tears to my eyes because I knew the way that I had held space and had used my language to facilitate cues. I'm not really touching bodies right now, but I'm really working on my language because I think that it's important. But I also saw her like, I cued halasana. We did the traditional like shoulder stands to halasana to fish pose. I mean, her halasana looked better than one I've ever done. And I think it's because she felt comfort, right? That posture has
Yeah.
been so difficult for me, and like I was saying, teaching twisting in classes right now, I have to be really careful because if I'm teaching a twist with my legs super tight into my belly, I might be able to find that twist easily, but some people have to move their bellies to get to it, or,
Well, I
their
love
breasts.
that
And
I love that you brought that up because actually, this is something that I want to just debunk. And I love that this is, being in the body is episode one because it becomes this gateway for all consciousness, which is I grew up in the Iyengar lineage and we always moved the body. It was not a big deal to like grab the belly or move breast tissue or do anything that you needed to do or move the thighs in order to feel the posture the way your body could feel the posture. And I think it's really fascinating that, we have this still this lingering egoic identification with an aesthetic as opposed to the spiritual nature that is the body,
yeah,
right?
it's sad.
So
It really brings sadness. It's a sad
yeah,
feeling for
yeah,
me.
it does because we, as teachers, for those of you that are listening and you don't know what halasana is, it's like this series that we do in some classes where we go shoulder stand to plow, and then we come out of that and open the chest a little bit more in fish pose.
Hmm.
And in that plow pose for women, like the breast tissue comes right up in the face, and sometimes we feel like we're smothering. And then if whether you're a man or a woman or however you identify and you go into that, sometimes it just feels like everything in your guts comes toward your face and it's really hard to breathe. As you get more comfortable in yourself, those
And
shapes
flexible.
change, right?
Yeah.
Because most of the time, people who are having issues in yoga poses, the problem is not flexibility in body, it's flexibility in mind.
Hmm.
And so I love that we're talking about this idea of from the external to the internal. That's what moving your body is about, right? On this path of awareness is that we go from the outside narrative, we start to close out that listening ear to that. We go inside and we really start understanding our own body. And so I'd love for you to share with people, what do you feel like is one of the big things that helps you get in touch with your body and love yourself more? Something maybe you do every day or something you practice every week. I'd love for you to share that.
Well, for me, I think when I'm teaching a class or if I just feel, like way up here and out of my mind or wait, maybe too much in my mind, um, I will actually, I like for people to drop in. I don't start any of my classes like standing at the top of the mat. I make sure that people are in a seat and that they can feel their sits points, that they can feel their shoulders. A lot of times lately, I've been talking about like I take a whole 5 minutes and I just get people in their body because it helps me get in my body. Even if you don't know like anatomy necessarily, I want you to think about the shape of your pelvic bones. Okay.
Yeah.
And then as you're thinking of that, allow them to ground into the earth. Then bring your attention to the shape of your shoulder girdle. It looks a lot like the pelvic girdle. Let your shoulders fall away from your ears. Bring your attention to the jaw girdle. Also looks like the shoulders, sort of, and the hips, sort of. Let that relax. You know what I mean? Also, I was just reading Dr. Vasant Lad, I read this sentence and I highlighted it and I can't stop thinking about it. And I've been using it in my classes, especially in like standing postures, big hip opening. Dr. Vasant Lad says, when your tongue is in the roof of your mouth, it puts you're in your higher chakras. So that means essentially you're in your head and not in the way that you want to be. Because sometimes we want to be there. Like it's not a bad place to be, but not when you're in a big heart or big hip opening posture. You don't want to be in your head there, dropping the tongue away from the root. And that's, I learned that from practicing with you. You always were like, drop the tongue from the roof of the mouth. And I would do it. And I was like, oh shit, I really was like locking that thing up there. And I see it in my students too. It's just like the relaxing of the girdles
Mhm.
for me
Mhm.
is what is grounding, because we're constantly putting so much pressure in these spaces and we wonder why our backs hurt or we're tight or all
Our
of this. And
shoulders
I mean,
hurt or why our neck hurts or our jaw hurts or
yeah,
why we have a headache, right?
we're never relaxing them. So you got to take time to just like, and just like Thich Nhat Hanh would say, like, all it has to be is I am breathing in, I am breathing out. I have
So
to go back to that.
what does that look like for you when it's just for you, no students in the room? Is that you sit and you go through these girdles, or is it that you
I
just have that moment of I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out? What else do you do to relax into
Per
the body?
personally, for me, it has been difficult. So that's why I can understand a student's difficulty. So yes, these are all things that have worked for me in the past. Currently, what I'm currently doing is sitting still. I like to listen to the sounds in the room, the sounds outside of the room, and then I try to find the sounds as far away as possible. And then I start coming back in until I can get just into my mind. And this sometimes takes 10 minutes. Okay. But then I can get just to my mind and allow each thought to come, observe, and let it leave. But for me, it takes a while for me to settle down, no matter how much work I've done on mindfulness, meditation, any of that. It still takes me a long time because I like to live up in my head. It's where I've been my whole life. So yeah, I mean, I practice yin also. That's most of my home practice. Or, I like Kundalini, which I learned with you initially because I can get inside some mantra and breath work, and that puts me inside my body. It puts me in my vocal cords. It puts me in my abdomen. You know what I mean? If I'm pumping breath of fire, it's much easier after a pranayama practice for me to settle in to my body, which I think was the point, maybe.
Yeah, well, yeah, what I love is that you're giving the listeners this hopefully like reality check that yoga isn't the only way for you to get in your body. Meditation isn't the only way for you to get in your body. There's so many ways out there for you to really dive into the body. And the more you dive into your body, the more you start honoring your unique experience. And as you start to honor your unique experience, the more you start loving yourself, which means it's really easy for you to start seeing your own worth.
Right.
And I'd love to ask you a couple more questions, Meagan, as we start to wrap up, which is what has been one thing that's really changed for you as you start to love and accept yourself more?
I am no longer I'm no longer buying into any of these aspects of culture, in my community, where I feel that something about my body needs to change in order for me to be an accepted part of it.
Oh, and I love that you brought up that word culture because,
Yeah,
anytime there's a cult, it means there's a modality of thought, which just means you went into a box and there's an identification. And as soon as we start identifying with something, we lost our true nature because we just put
mhm.
ourselves in this box, right? So that was a great answer for the listeners. I could not have asked for a better response. And then what I would love to do, Meagan, as we wrap up is let everyone know how they can find you. Like, what's your Instagram handle? Do you do Facebook? What's going on with that?
So the best way to find me, I use Instagram generally, and I'm focusing more with my Instagram on my some Ayurvedic stuff. So if you want like tips and stuff, uh, the name, okay, of my Ayurvedic realm that I'm working constantly to create. It's Chandra, like the Sanskrit name for moon. So it's spelled Chrandra, Chandra. Chandra Shine, and then underscore Ayurveda. So you can find me there. My last name is nowhere on social media, but yeah, you can find me. I teach, local all around Georgia, and or all around like North Georgia. But generally, that's where you can find me. I'm always giving tips. I take consultations, so I really like to look at, if you have an imbalance going on, your Ayurvedic practitioner or wellness coach, Ayurvedic wellness coach. Ayurveda is just a really different way of looking at things. It's specific to you. I come from a place where uh, it's a very simple approach. I'm not going to give you tons of herbs. We're not going to look at things necessarily like you're used to when you go to a doctor. We're not going to look at things like there's something wrong with you, because there's probably not. What's wrong is just kind of the way you're thinking it. So that's sort of how I'm working with clients right now. I believe it's my duty to help people remember things that they might have forgotten, in the
Yeah.
process
Oh, I
of
love that.
just being alive. So there's nothing I'm going to ever offer a client that they can't access, I guess, on their,
Awesome.
you know.
Awesome.
So
Well,
yeah,
I'm
Chandra Shine Ayurveda. That's where you can find me. And I have a website
awesome.
as well.
That's your website title as well.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. And I'll put those links for those of you that are listening to the podcast. If you're not watching the video version, I'll make sure that those links are below the audio so that you can check everything out that the amazing Meagan has to offer. And I want to say thank you so much for listening. And Meagan, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate all that you're doing for humanity. And I'm just so blessed to have you as a friend and be a part of your journey. In the meantime, everyone, stay illuminated, and I'll see you on the journey.